Welcome to Low to Grow, the podcast transforming life's toughest moments into personal motivation. I'm Annie, a Forbes Under 30 technology founder whose entrepreneurship journey ran alongside a mental health awakening. In each episode, I sit down with inspiring individuals who have each faced incredible challenges, tackled it head on, and emerged stronger on the other side. Together, we'll explore their stories, unpack the lessons that they have learned, and also understand how they managed to turn challenges into opportunities for personal growth. Whether you're navigating uncertainty in your personal life or simply looking for motivation to keep going, this is your space for the honest conversations that you will want to hear. If this resonates with you, hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you know someone who's struggling, share this with them. You might just prompt them to take the first step towards better mental health. Now, let's dive in. Today, we're joined by Milica Krstic, a psychologist and body-orientated psychotherapist. I actually first met Milica in Botswana at the Forbes Under 30 conference, and there I was really struck by her deeply personal story behind why she does what she does today. After several of her friends attempted suicide, Milica took action to create an online platform that has since provided free therapy to thousands of people across the globe. And Milica was celebrated and honoured for this work as a Forbes Under 30 lister. And in fact, Milica now helps founders to navigate the invisible emotional dynamics shaping their teams in order to build cultures of clarity, trust, and sustainable growth. She is currently also developing an AI-based inner ally tool to make emotional support accessible, private, but still human. And of course, this is all driven by Milica's belief that each individual deserves to feel seen, safe and supported, and that our most painful moments can become the seeds of something meaningful. And this is what makes her a perfect guest for the podcast Low to Grow today. Milica, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Let me start by asking you, who would you like to be listening to our conversation today?
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure as well to be here today with you. I imagine a woman who is sitting at her home and feeling ashamed to step out of her comfort zone and show others what she's developing, thinking about researching whatever she's doing. So this is for her that is scared to go out and say what she truly believes. I think that there are a lot of us like that out there, but very often we tend to put some masks on in order to feel more comfortable in communities and societies. So deep down there inside, there is a fear that people will reject us, that they'll laugh at us. And this is for all those men or women, it doesn't matter. But mostly since I'm woman, I can, I'm woman that very often I feel ashamed and scared. And I think that people who can understand what I'm talking about this will be mostly helpful to them.
That's a really profound experience, and I really hope that your story will resonate and be able to help some of the listeners today. Let's start from the beginning. How did your personal challenge really inspire you to do all the work and the projects in mental well-being that you have done to date?
So basically in 2020, that summer when COVID pandemic started, I was seeing my friends. We tried to live normal life and to behave like everything is fine. But sadly, later on, I realized that some of my friends attempted suicide and 2 of them committed suicide. So basically that shocked me. I was so scared, sad, vulnerable that things like that, they're not happening to someone else somewhere there. They happened to me, I saw that people a few days ago before that happened, right? That was one of the lowest points in my life where I was like, I was educated to be a psychologist and psychotherapist, so I supposed to see, I supposed to feel. And I just realized that my friends, they were so very well in pretending that they're okay and not showing how they actually feel, that I was not able to realize how they are really. So it was a very sad moment for me where I felt like a loser, like a failure, because I was not able to do what I was trained to do, actually, what I studied for. It was 5 years ago, and actually that moment motivated me to create safe space that we have right now that is helping people to receive help that they deserve.
This is the online platform that people globally can use to access free psychotherapy. And I've been a user of that before, and I think it's a fantastic resource to have. And when I was using it, I was still based in the UK. And of course, I was able to speak to a psychotherapist from Serbia. So that was really, really special and quite a useful tool. Milica, for your experience during COVID, that was a very dark time for a lot of people. And as you were saying, for you to have spent time with your friends and then later, a few days later, realize that they had tried to commit suicide. And of course, for you being in the psychotherapy and the psychology profession, that sense of self-judgment that you had on yourself could have been quite damaging, but it seems that you managed to convert that into something that was positive and took action from it. What were your initial reactions when you realized that some of your really close friends tried to commit suicide? Did you have people around you that you could turn to for support?
That first initial moment was very damaging, like you said. I was very lost, scared, ashamed, confused. But then I started to speak with my parents and my psychotherapist. I started to talk about it because I realized throughout my education that if you don't talk about your challenges, they seem bigger than they are. So that's what I just used, what I've learned, to talk about the issue that I'm dealing with. When you share it with one person, it becomes smaller. When you share it with 3 people, then it becomes more real. You can do something with that. It becomes more flexible, right? But then when it's just in your head, it seems impossible, unsolvable, crazy, insane, right? You don't know what to do with it. So basically, I started to speak with people how I feel, and I realized that many people had suicidal thoughts and that they didn't seek help, that we are not educated well enough, that we need to seek help when we have one negative thought, to do prevention. No, we are taught that when it starts to be very bad and we start to fall apart, then start to seek help. So actually one of the things that we did and we are doing in Safe Space is that we expanded our vision to education, because I think it's very important to educate people how to prevent things, not just to heal them and help them in the end and in some very, very difficult moments in their life, but to learn them how to avoid that, to sense what is happening, to understand what is going on. You know what they say, it's very easy to give advice to someone else, but it's much harder to use that advice in yourself. So very often you will see that psychotherapists, they can help others, they can heal others, but they need their selves, they need themselves psychotherapists who will support them so they can manage and, have their normal life and quality that they are giving to others, that they can keep that silence, calmness, peace within them.
Mm. That's actually a really interesting point because I don't think I realized until a bit later in my own kind of mental health awareness journey that therapists and psychotherapists, they too need to see psychotherapists and to have therapy themselves in order to almost have a barrier between what they're taking on from the sessions with their clients and for their own lives internally. And I think, for you, Milica, you saw a problem and you created a solution and you've really turned your personal pain into impact and you've created this platform that has been useful for a lot of people. What did you learn about yourself in the process of creating that first iteration of Safe Space?
I learned that I'll put others on the first spot and I'll care about others. And in that journey, I'll forget about myself and I'll not take care of myself. And that's one of the as well low points that I met throughout these past 3 years while I'm leading Safe Space is that we're helping, we're growing, we are trying to add more psychotherapists, to work on marketing and everything. And in one moment, I just realized that I'm burning out, It's just like I didn't realize how bad I am because I'm not sleeping enough and I don't have at that moment social life. That was last August, that I'm so into my project to help others so others can have accessible mental health, feel better, help psychotherapists to gain their licenses by helping more people that collect hours that helps them to receive the license. Doing so many things, but at the end, I didn't care about myself. So literally, that was a burnout for me. And then I took off. I took time off in order to recharge, recollect. And I learned that when I'm very passionate about something, I can forget about myself and my health. So that's something very important that I gained as a knowledge throughout this experience, that if you don't care, if you don't take care of yourself, your product will just fall apart.
The work that you are doing is to help other people have better emotional well-being, but you gave so much of yourself in that process. And of course, because it was so meaningful and interesting for you, you're almost in the flow state and you don't realize how much of a toll that is taking on you personally and in other areas of your life. So I think that's something that I can probably relate to. I think a lot of founders or, just people in some high intensity jobs can really just fall trapped to that. It's quite encouraging to hear you talk about your own experience with burnout, because I think a lot of times burnout, there are different stages. It's not just like a switch. There are many, many steps leading up to that final crash. And there are actually some signs that people can look at in order to identify that and maybe prevent that. For you, Milica, you decided to take some time off. Was that something that people around you really encouraged you to do?
To be honest, I realized that I have a burnout when I wanted to quit, to delete the platform, to tell everyone that we are done and that that's it. And then my friends started to say, "Hey, don't do that. You build this on your own. You did this with your 10 fingers, literally by yourself, by your funds, by everything. Wait a second, maybe you just need a break." And then I realized that it's a burnout, because literally I was crying for a month. I was crying and I was not able, when you're that bad that you cannot open WhatsApp to answer the message. You cannot speak with people. You cannot go out. So it was that bad. But the moment when I realized it's a burnout, it's when I decided to quit. But then all my friends and my parents, they were like, "No, no, 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 don't do that. Don't do that. You just need a break." Then I took a break. It was like literally a month or a little bit more, let's say between 30 and 60 days. And then I said, okay, let's change how this works. Let's make this sustainable. Let's change the organization so this can stay alive in a long run in many, many years. But even though it's very interesting, like I said previously, you can give advice to others, you can help others, you can catch when you're not involved. But when it's your story, sometimes you cannot realize what is happening. And because of that, it's always important to have someone to reflect on, someone always to talk with someone to talk about what's happening in your life, how you're dealing with that, what kind of strategies, techniques, and tools you're using in order to deal with that. Because there is a stigma around the mental health, of course. So we always talk about that, but we don't even understand how that is internalized in our lives, that such as experts, we cannot sometimes understand that there is mental health issue happening with us and we help others deal with that. It's a paradox, right? It happened to me, and because of that, I'm speaking from my experience, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Since your experience of burning out, what changes have you made in your routine, or what kind of new things have you started doing in order to still be able to work on growing self-space into your vision for it, but to still remain healthy and also emotionally well?
So I started to have slow mornings, to wake up and not to have obligations immediately when I wake up. Before my burnout, it was immediately. I wake up, I start to work something, answer the emails, have healthy breakfast, go out, have a little walk, so many things, And then I realized that doesn't work for me. I need a slow morning to slowly wake up, to do a meditation, then to have warm tea or to slowly move my body or go for a walk. So I need slowness in order to be sharp when I'm working. And then I realized when I started to reorganize my life after that burnout, I realized that I'm a very social person, but on the other hand, I'm very introverted. So I was not respecting my own boundaries. And I just realized that after that happened, that as introvert, I need to respect that I love silence, to be by myself, to have slow mornings, to not go out that much, etc. But very often I was like, no, let's go. Let's do a million meetings per day. Let's go out that night. Let's read 20 pages of book, even though I cannot look. My eyes are hurting. Be so productive, you know? And then I realized after that burnout that that's not the way I function. That doesn't work for me. I need to be slow, to have parts of my week when I'm very productive and parts of my week where I'm literally breathing, walking, drinking water. I'm very present. And then when I implemented that slowness, but extreme slowness into my week, I recharged and I learned how to stay productive, to have results, to help people, but as well to nurture myself.
Point about nurturing yourself, I think that's something that perhaps some young professionals can take a while to learn. And I myself, hands up, I'm one of them. I think similarly to you, when I first started working and in the really early days of the startup, I would, check my emails first thing in the morning as soon as I open my eyes, and then check my emails before going to bed. And sometimes that's not very productive because things can happen and it can be good news, in which case I'm super excited, or really bad news, in which case then I can't go to sleep or I just feel stressed as soon as I wake up. So I think your point about, having that personal boundaries and finding the tune and the cadence that really works for you is super important. You've now also started working with founder-led teams across Europe to help them, understand the dynamics within their team in order to build a more productive and better culture. With the founders that you work with, what sort of challenges do you normally see them facing?
It's interesting that I see that they're facing the same challenges that I face. So I can help them better because I understand them. In one moment, my team was 120 people, and I was me versus 120 people. So that experience with Safe Space literally helped me to understand better founders, what they're dealing with, what they need to manage. Everything needs to function and they need to function well. Right now, I'm helping them to maintain healthy relationships within their teams. And, very often startups, they're just about raising money, making results, and earning money. And then very often they don't understand why they need me when they raised a round, as example, and they want to invest in product, in marketing, in new tech solutions, whatever. And they're like, why do we need you? You're a psychologist, psychotherapist, and what you will bring to us. But then when they take me as a part of their team, I work with them 3 weeks in person, and I speak with each part of the team in order to help everybody feel understood, and then how they can communicate differently, improve their communication, and then improve their results. People don't understand that if communication is not well, if people are not speaking much between each other within the teams in startups, they cannot bring the results that they are expected from them. It's very interesting. You can create solutions, startups, raise money, do so many things, especially when you're on Forbes 30 under 30 list. Everybody wants you. They think that you're God that is arriving there to solve them all problems. But then you're just human that brings human, like, vibes and everything. So I was thinking, how can I improve what I'm working, what I'm offering, what can I change in order to feel more aligned with me? Since I have clients one-on-one psychotherapy that I work with them for the past 7 years. But now I just improved that and I decided to give opportunities for startups to work with me in person for 3 weeks. So it's really something refreshing for me as well. But I feel like my clients feel as well nurtured and better.
The culture of a company or an organization, whether it's public or private, and whether it's, a 3-person team or like a 3,000 people team, culture really matters. And as you said, communication is super critical. And I think sometimes in teams, if there's a lot of nationalities, or people with different lived experiences, that's a really ripe opportunity for lots of potential misunderstandings to happen. So I think, the work that you do with the teams that you work with is really just making sure that everyone's intent is communicated and understood. And that is really, really important. I can see the value of that. But for you, when you first started working with the smaller startup teams, I think you mentioned sometimes in startups it can just be about fundraising and, spending money on product, because in the end, this is what they're measured against. When you are brought in to join a team, what type of pushback or challenges do you experience?
To be honest, there is a lot of not trust. I cannot call that trust because people are confused. Who are you now? Why do I need to talk with you? Why I need to share with you something private in order for you to help me to understand better my team? So people are at the beginning a little bit scared and they feel confused when they sense my energy and they need between 5 and 10 minutes to understand how serious I am, how present I am. And then naturally we build trust, which is not written or said, but you can sense it as energy where I'm 100% present and I care about another person, and that other person can feel the presence. Very often we need to feel seen, and then we need another person to seize us, and then we need to feel that someone saw us. So that is very often what people need. And when you give them, they start to trust you because they see that you care. And then very quickly we build trust. But of course, initially, there is no trust. You need to earn it.
What advice would you give to someone, perhaps someone who thinks that they're not great at forming bonds or connections with their colleagues, and perhaps someone who feels that they are not good at expressing themselves? What type of tips would you give them to help them improve their relationships with their coworkers?
So basically, building inner safety so we feel safe within our space helps us have better relationship with other people. So we can be introvert and have amazing relationship with other people, but we need to know how to approach. Very often when people are lacking self-confidence, self-esteem, they have a lot of unprocessed shame. They think if they approach that someone will laugh at them, someone will misunderstood them or think that they're stupid. So it's very important to address that and to understand that it's completely natural to feel like that, to process that shame, because very often it's shame. Shame and feeling a sense of guilt, there are two most toxic emotions that are sometimes unconsciously there. We think we are anxious, but basically we're ashamed that something bad will happen and that we are wrong, that something about us is wrong. And then when you start slowly to practice that you are completely fine, to work on your internal safety, then you start to approach people and then you have more positive experiences and you rebuild that. So next time when you approach someone, you are not scared that something bad will happen. You are expecting good result, which means, hey, how are you? Good, how are you? What's new? And then you have conversation. You don't have someone saying you something rude or something like that. But we need to have a little bit courage and hope that there is a possibility that we will have polite conversation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I really resonate with your point about having that safe internal, that inner space, and dealing and maybe recognizing some emotions that we have suppressed or maybe we've just grown used to living with, and then seeing how that can be acknowledged, processed, and then it's just, reaching out to people and making that first effort of interacting with someone else. I think from my experience, I think when I was younger, I was probably very, very shy certain times. And I would always, think, oh, if I reached out to someone from like a cold call, for example, would they even want to respond to me? But then I actually find the more you do that, most people actually say yes. And I think generally people by default are kind. And this is something that for some reason can be forgotten about. But I think if more people just, remember in their mind, people generally are kind by default and they will want to help you if you can communicate what you need. I think that's a way to make the world a more well-rounded and also easier place to live in for everyone.
That's amazing. Yes, I agree with you 100%. People are kind by default. And when you try to reach out and you see that they're kind and they want to help you, you feel safer, right?
Definitely, completely agree with you on that. Milica, I know that you've been traveling and you were invited to speak about the future of well-being as well. Could you share some key highlights from that with us?
So I was invited by the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia in winter 2023 to talk about emotional well-being and how we can take care of ourselves. I was fascinated by the culture, how they are developed, because I didn't know a lot about the culture. And when I went there, I saw people who are going on psychotherapy, talking openly about how they take care of their mental health. So basically, key points are that we need to share how we feel. People expect to break the stigma, but they don't want to talk about their feelings. And they have short conversations such as, how are you, good you? And that's it. But if we extend that, how are you really? When you listen and sit down there and really care about what will come from the other side, that's how you change the mental health. It's maybe a simple way, but trust me, it's the beginning. It's first step. When other person feels seen, like I was previously saying, we need to care about others so we can feel more safer, that we feel that we live in safer environment, and then change start to happen. But the first step is to show the vulnerability, that gentleness that we all carry inside. We often feel like that's something bad, weak, sad, soft, that is not accepted by the society. But if you show that to others and like, look, this is me, and sometimes I'm very sad and I don't want to meet with other people and I want to sit in my house, but this is me as well, you know. And then when you talk about that, ask other people, hey, do you have sometimes phases in your life when you're closed in your home and you want to be just with yourself? And then you start to realize that there are a lot of people like you, and you start to feel like, okay, I'm just a normal human being. But if you don't talk about it, you feel weird. You feel like, oh, I'm odd, but actually you're just human. So I think the starting point is to start to talk about how you feel.
For you, because I know that you're also doing some work incorporating AI into safe space. From your view, how does technology play a part in the future of mental health?
So there are two sides. One side is that people are very scared of AI because they think that AI will take our roles and there will be robots that will behave like humans, and then all psychologists and psychotherapists will lose their jobs, and we will, calm down our nervous system with talking with ChatGPT or another AI models. But there is other side that says that combining AI with human will really help people. So I deeply believe that AI never can change human exchange, that way how we react on that. So basically there is oxytocin, a hormone that is activated within us when we have a human connection. So basically, I would say more intimate human connection, but that cannot be activated with AI. I never saw until now any research that did that. What I deeply believe that AI can really help us and it can be our ally. It can help people be better, but they need to be educated how to use it. And we need, of course, privacy, ethical moments and everything so people can really feel safe. But I think that AI is future and we need to jump on that train and educate ourselves about AI so we can use it and make our life not more difficult, but easier and better.
That approach that you've taken, embracing technology and learning how to steer and use it, rather than being afraid and avoiding it. And in a way, it's almost like emotions, right? Bad emotions. You don't want to just press it down and ignore it because it will just fester and someday it will blow up. But you just want to acknowledge it, embrace it, and then let it go. And in the end, once it's dealt with, you as a person will just feel so much better. It's been fantastic speaking with you. I just have one last question to ask you before we wrap up, which is our podcast staple. What do you personally think will allow more people to have better mental health?
Speaking openly about how they really feel. That is something that can improve mental health. So it's very simple. That means to say the truth in a not harmful way. And when you teach and train yourself how to speak truth, to be honest in a non-harmful way, you fulfill your deeper need, and then you have stronger mental health system within you.
Thank you for sharing that. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing your personal journey, giving us a bit of a teaser of what you're up to with Safe Space and the future of that. I personally find your journey really inspiring because it really was a challenging, dark personal experience that you have had that then motivated you to create something that now really helps a lot of people across the world, no matter where they are based and also no matter what language or culture they're from. And I just know that our listeners will take so much from this conversation.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for this episode of Low to Grow. If you learned something today, help more people to find this conversation by hitting the subscribe button and leaving a review. Keep growing, and until next time.